Humility is restraint that comes from rootedness. It's the ability to carry strength with discipline. You don't throw your weight around just because you can. You carry it with grace because you know who gave it to you. Chapter 1. Humility. What humility is and isn't. Before we dive deeper into how humility gets twisted, manipulated, or confused with weakness, I want to start here with what humility truly is. Because humility isn't loud, as we know. It doesn't clamor for credit. Obviously, it doesn't perform for approval or compete for space. But on the other hand, it also doesn't collapse under pressure or shrink into invisibility. Humility stands, it holds, it sees, and it leads without ever needing to be the loudest one in the room. Here's what humility isn't. Before we go any deeper in this series over the next several weeks, we need to clear that up because there's a lot of misconceptions on what it is and is not. Humility is not being the quietest person in the room, ignoring your own needs, pretending to be insecure so people don't think you're proud, or letting others walk all over you. It's not shrinking back so others can shine while you disappear. In fact, what often looks like humility is really self-protection. It's fear and it's shame. It's codependent survival techniques and trauma response. If you've ever been told that being humble means being small or silent or stepped on, let me be clear, that's not humility. That's something else. And even if you've been pressured to equate humiliation with humility, hear this as well. Humility and humiliation are complete opposites. In fact, they're really not even on the same planet. One restores, the other destroys. One builds dignity while the other degrades it. Humility is never forced upon you while humiliation is. Here is the core of humility. It is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Do you know who said that? That was C.S. Lewis. And he was spot on. Humble people aren't trying to prove anything. They're grounded. They're calm. They're measured. They carry authority without domination. They don't need to win to feel worthy. They know who they are without having to shout about it. Let me say something that you might not have thought of before, but truly humble people make the best leaders. Why is that? Because they're safe. They're not competing with you. They're not threatened by your success. They don't need to grab the spotlight. People are drawn to humble leaders, not because they fight for power, but because they carry trustworthiness, because they seek clearly, because they build instead of compete. Humility leads without noise. It doesn't shout to get attention. It creates space where others can rise, and the truly humble are not threatened by that. Humility is a posture. It's not a personality trait. Some people think humility means being soft-spoken or quiet. Not necessarily. You can be bold and humble. You can speak with authority and still be humble. You can defend the vulnerable, challenge corruption, call out sin, and still be humble. Why? Because humility isn't about tone. It's about posture. It's about your heart. It's about where your strength comes from and who you're submitted to. It's about how you treat people who can't do anything for you. Humility is the quality that makes people feel safe with you. It says, you can tell me hard things and I won't make it about me. I won't hijack your moment or outshine your story. I won't twist your words or turn them into a sermon. I'm not threatened by you, and I don't measure you next to me, and I don't measure myself next to you. Humble people listen with wisdom, with balance, and with calm assurance. And here's the key. Being passive is not humility. Letting others disrespect you? Not humility. Being a doormat isn't spiritual maturity, and it's certainly not humility. Humility draws boundaries with kindness and clarity. It knows the difference between serving and erasing yourself. One of the most powerful qualities of humility is an ability to turn inward without fear. A proud heart resists self-examination. It clings to being right. It feels threatened when flaws are exposed. But a humble heart welcomes the light. Many years ago, I read a book that stopped me in my tracks. To this day, it still It's like impressed upon my heart. It's The Final Quest by a gentleman named Rick Joyner. It's a spiritual allegory written like a dream or a vision. It's not doctrine, but it's filled with truth. And there's a scene I've never forgotten. The main character is glowing with glory from being in the presence of God. You find out about that in the book. It explains that journey up a mountain to the glory of God. His armor is so radiant, reflecting the glory of God. But what's happening to his vision is that glory that's radiating off of his armor is blinding him from seeing some things. He's unable to see into the valley below because the light is blinding him. So he asks Wisdom, who is his traveling companion, for something to cover it up. And Wisdom hands him this drab-looking cloak. He's kind of insulted by it and says, "What is this?" "Humility," Wisdom said. "You won't be able to see clearly without it." And that's the turning point. As soon as he puts on this drab cloak called humility, he starts seeing things he couldn't see before. His eyes got very sharp. The traps of pride, the dangers behind him, the hidden ambushes that others were experiencing, but they couldn't see. And Wisdom says something chilling. Pride is the hardest enemy to see, especially after you've been in the glory. Wow. Even the most radiant warriors were vulnerable because they had no armor on their backs. They'd climbed high, they'd had huge victories, they were known by many, but without humility, they didn't see the enemy sneaking up behind them. That line has stayed with me for decades. You won't be able to see clearly without humility. A proud heart resists self-examination. It clings to being right. It feels threatened when flaws are exposed. But a humble heart, it welcomes the light. The humble person is not afraid of self-checking. They can pause in the middle of conflict or even long after and ask, did I contribute to this? Were my words too sharp? Did my silence wound as much as speech would have? And here's the key. They don't spiral into shame when the answer is yes. Instead, they see self-awareness as strength. They recognize that checking themselves is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the mark of someone secure enough to admit they don't always get it right. When a humble person spots something they did wrong, they don't stall. They don't immediately become embarrassed. They don't stew in self-loathing, and they don't hide behind excuses. They don't insist that they're right because it's so impossible for them to ever admit something wrong. They're not afraid that their entire image is going to crumble for doing something wrong. They move toward repair confidently, almost excitedly. For the humble, an apology is not humiliation, it's an opportunity. It's not weakness, it's strength. An opportunity to close the gap that offense created. An opportunity to show the other person, you matter to me more than my ego. An opportunity to strengthen trust rather than let it erode. The proud, they see apologies as loss of power. The humble see apology as restoration of relationship. Humility reframes apology as beauty, not shame. When the humble say, I was wrong, they aren't tearing themselves down. They're building something up. They're building trust. They're building safety. They're building a bridge where there was a fracture. And here's the secret. Apologizing doesn't diminish their dignity. It actually magnifies it because nothing reveals strength like the courage to be wrong without losing yourself. One of my clients once came to me carrying a really heavy weight. She said to me, I think I've damaged my friendship. She told me how she lashed out in defense about something with a friend of hers, and instead of hearing the friend's heart, she snapped back. The friend had come to her with an unkind accusation, and instead of hearing her heart, she got defensive. She said she took it personally, and now it felt like there was a wall between them. I asked her to walk me through what happened. Her friend had felt rejected by something that was never meant to reject her. It was a misperception fueled by an old hurt. And in that moment, she overreacted to my client. My client, who was normally gracious, was suddenly triggered by this. Why? Because she came from a family where her emotionally immature mother often gaslit her, constantly making her feel as though she was rejecting her own mother, when in truth she wasn't. That dynamic left her carrying an old, raw wound that had been there for years. The fear of being accused of rejecting when she hadn't done anything wrong. So when her friend came at her with perceived rejection, it hit that old scar. My client bristled and she snapped back, and she heard it not just as her friend's words, but as the echo of her mother's manipulations. And now both women were hurt. The friend had reacted from her wound, and my client had reacted from hers. And those collided in what should have been a simple conversation that they worked through. Now their friendship is fractured. As we talked, I asked her, why did this hit you so deeply? And she explained that situation to me with her own mom, how it took her back to feeling like she was being manipulated again. So that was the real wound. Her friend obviously didn't know about this situation. It wasn't manipulating her, but it felt the same, felt like the same wound. And the friend was interpreting the situation through her own wounds. So here's my client. Years of being gaslit, shamed, and made to feel responsible for her mother's fragility had been triggered. 2 wounds, 1 miscommunication. And once we named it, she could see it clearly. This wasn't just about her friend. It was about her own unhealed place that twisted how she heard the words. We sat with it, we prayed through it, we released that lie that she was always rejecting someone, when in truth she wasn't, and she began to realize that she reacted out of her own wound, and that her friend reacted out of hers. So together, their wounds created this divide that didn't need to be there. But here's where humility changes everything. She didn't get stuck in guilt, and she didn't spiral into condemnation. Conversely, she also didn't raise up in pride and play the victim. She recognized it as an opportunity not to punish herself or her friend, but to repair. I told her, yes, your friend also has something to apologize for. She overreacted to something that wasn't rejection, but humility doesn't sit back and wait for fairness, does it? It doesn't say, well, I'll apologize if she apologizes too. It's not a transaction that's just pride. True humility says, I will own my part first. I will go low. I will seek peace, even if the other person never says they're sorry. So she went. She admitted her defensiveness. She told her friend, hey, I was wrong to snap. I reacted out of my own hurt and didn't listen to you the way I should have. Please forgive me. She didn't withhold humility. She didn't hold her apology hostage, waiting for her friend to move first. She simply owned her part with sincerity, with kindness, and with no strings attached. She had no idea whether her friend was going to receive her apology or even at all notice that she was part of contributing to this fracture. She didn't wait around to see if, okay, I did mine, will you do yours? She let it stand, and here's what happened. Her friend softened. She apologized as well for overreacting out of her own pain. The wall crumbled, trust was restored. Why? Because one person chose humility instead of pride. She leaned in. Her friendship was more valuable than being right. Humility doesn't make reconciliation conditional. It doesn't demand the other person move first. It doesn't calculate, bargain, or wait for fairness. Humility says, I will repair what I can. I will repent where I was wrong. I will create space for healing, whether or not you meet me there. And more often than not, when you lead with humility, you make it easier for the other person to humble themselves as well. That's why humility is so powerful. It's safe, and that's why humility is a crown no one can ever take from you. Humility lets you see people the way God sees them. Another beautiful thing about humility is this. It lets you see people the way Christ sees them. It pierces through the fog of conflict, the swirl of misunderstanding, the triggers and the noise, and it lets you see the heart of the person in front of you. When you're wearing the glasses of humility, you don't get caught in the weeds. You're not obsessed with winning moments. You're not obsessed with proving yourself right. You're seeing through the fog and you're loving the person. You're not undone by disagreement. You're not threatened by someone else's success. You're rooted enough to see clearly, even when what looks like the apparent issue really isn't the issue at all. There's a misconception that humility is weak, that it gets walked on and that it lets others control the room. But that's not humility. That's something else. If you are feeling any of those things, we need to explore other possible traumas or toxic situations that you may have endured. But these are not the definition of humility. Humble people are some of the safest people on the planet. They don't react emotionally to every comment, and they don't need to dominate. They don't demand applause. They listen with wisdom. They respond with calm. They lead with grace. And because they are safe, people follow them, not from force, but from trust. Humility doesn't mean you lack opinions. It means your opinions don't own you, and they don't have to own the conversation. It doesn't mean you avoid confrontation. It means you're not agitated by it. It doesn't mean you're never going to speak truth. It means when you do, it's from love, not ego. The humble are rooted, still, present, carriers of peace. At its root, humility is spiritual clarity. It's knowing you're not God. You are fully loved by Him. Everything you have comes from grace. Humility strips away the glare of pride. It steadies your vision, it gives you wisdom, and when you walk in humility, you are not easily wounded. You're not measuring yourself against others. You're living from the grace of God. There's one more line from the final quest I want to leave you with, and here it is. You only have true strength to the degree that you walk in the grace of God, and He gives His grace to the humble. No evil weapon can penetrate this mantle. Wow, that line gives me chills every time. So, a question for you. Do you want to stay wise? You want to walk in true discernment where this mantle, this drab-looking garment of humility doesn't garner you praise from others, doesn't look for praise from others. Because the moment we think we don't need it, it's usually the moment pride sneaks up behind us. So we start here, not with shame, not with erasure, not with humiliation. We start with the real thing, because humility is not weakness. It's not insecurity. It's not silence. It's a quiet crown that maybe no one else sees but the Lord Himself. And when you wear it, you're carrying safety. You carry vision and trust and peace. This is just the beginning. In the chapters ahead, we'll walk through counterfeits, false meekness, performance, passivity, humiliation, erasure, spiritually toxic messages about humility, spiritual abuse. But for now, hold on to this. Humility is strength, clarity, and very strong armor. Put it on, keep it on, and walk in it because the humble see clearly.
This show is made possible by listeners like you. If you'd like to support the message of truth and healing, you can give at cof.ee/The Coach Mel Show. That's coff.ee/The Coach Mel Show. Or just scroll down to the show notes and tap the link. Help make it possible for Coach Mel to keep spreading truth, clarity, and healing. Thanks for tuning in to The Coach Mel Show. For more episodes, teaching, and tools to walk in emotional and spiritual freedom, follow the show on your favorite platform. And remember, clarity leads to courage, and courage leads to healing. We'll see you next time.